Well, but I guess I'm glad I don't have a full stomach right now, because we're going to talk briefly about the AEW program from this past Wednesday night, which apparently made news for technical difficulties on Spectrum Cable's end. This is what I heard, was that a bunch of people had a freeze frame from the Big Bang Theory, and that there were other issues with people who are foolishly, like I am, patrons of Spectrum Cable. Mine worked for the first hour and a half of the program. That's where I heard all the problems were. What do you hear about this?
Well, you kind of said exactly what I heard, and I saw some screenshots on Twitter. People said that they had Spectrum, and I immediately think of you because you've made them famous. And then they showed the screenshot of the Big Bang Theory. So you had a problem at a different time?
Yes, because I was all ready to go back to the DVR going, this ain't going to work. And unfortunately, it worked perfectly. For the first hour and a half of the program, everything was fine, and then suddenly the goddamn audio just dropped out. And for the last half hour, there was perfect picture and no audio. But unfortunately, I know what happened there, and I had to watch most of the rest of it. I don't know if friendly journalists were trying to set them up for a rotten rating based on the quality of the program, or whether that problem really was widespread. But I don't know how I had something other people didn't have, and vice versa. We'll see what happens. But the program started with, now this year, the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal was not for the Dynamite Diamond. It was for, which MJF has won 3 years in a row. It was for the winner of this match to get a shot at the Dynamite Diamond, right? But Starks was already going to wrestle MJF. What don't I get about this?
Yeah, you're right. What did Starks win? He did win something where he had a title shot already, right?
Yes. He won the tournament or whatever they had. Now he's won the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal, but he don't get the Dynamite Diamond.
He gets a shot at the diamond. No, but
he already had a shot at the guy that has the diamond.
Who's got the pearl? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, anyway, we come on the air from the Big Bang Theory. Some people still had the Big Bang Theory. And it's a battle royal, and here comes Ricky Starks and Jungle Boy and Dustin Rhodes. And then everybody else was already at ringside, and apparently it was all job guys and underneath guys. I saw Dalton Castle and the Blade and whatever, and they just jumped in and started fighting without any introductions. And Sockface rattled off about half dozen names, and it was a battle royal. And who gives a shit, right? So I'm just trying to get through this thing. And did you see the spot with Brian Cage and Jungle Boy?
Yeah, I did see it, and I was hoping you had seen it too.
I watched it back 4 or 5 times. So Brian Cage is all big and bad, his jacked up self, picks up poor old Dalton Castle and throws him over the top rope so his boys can catch him, and stands there and hits a double bicep, which is his best move in wrestling. And Jungle Boy drop kicks him in the back. And then he apparently realized that he was supposed to go over the top rope, but he was only like 2 feet from it. So he just lurched into the rope and got hung, and then stopped, and then threw his right leg up in the air on purpose and kind of rolled over the top rope on purpose so that they could do some contrived back and forth on the apron before he got knocked to the ground and was eliminated. So anyway, apparently now the story of the last of this thing is Matt Hardy and the other Page were in it, and Hardy has lost a match of some description. I think they got it off the Seinfeld episode. He has to be the other Page's butler, because now Page is telling him what's for, and he's going, delete, delete, I don't want to do this, and they argue with each other. And somehow Captain Sean Dean, is he a captain or a colonel? Is it Colonel Sean Dean?
No, it's Captain. He's a captain.
I wasn't sure whether he'd been promoted or not. But Captain Sean Dean, who we haven't seen in how the fuck long? I don't know. It suddenly ended up at the bottom 4 in this. Dean, Starks, the other Page and Matt Hardy. And while they were arguing with each other, they pitched Dean out eventually and then argued some more. And then Starks dumped Matt. And the other Page picked up Starks and threw him over, but Starks held on. And Page lost. It is a nice looking bump, but I'm not sure it made sense logically and physically. But some way or another, he threw the guy over, but Ricky held on and Page went over and Starks won. But then MJF's music hit and I was like, okay, let's stick with this thing for a minute. And then we got to the point where, and Brian, I think you mentioned this the other day, it's almost like you get into something on this show where you think, this is a good show. And then suddenly everything goes to shit. And MJF and Starks face to face was great. And Starks held his own with him. MJF had blistered Danielson for not showing up tonight, quote unquote. He wasn't there. The whole thing with Regal, blah, blah, blah. But when MJF is cutting the promo, here's one thing I was thinking, though. MJF is cutting the promo and the fans are chanting, shut the fuck up. And then MJF tells Ricky Starks, you're the drizzling shits, which, you know, I guess isn't as bad as shut the fuck up. But, you know, there's a new head of programming. Did you see this?
I did. It's a separate question we should probably talk about.
Yes, but I'm just saying there's a new head of programming. And the farther they get removed from the people who gave them this deal, as more and more people turn over, I just can't imagine that somebody eventually in TBS and TNT is going to want to hear fuck 18 times on their basic cable in prime time. Anyway. So MJF said that Starks was a dollar store Dwayne, started calling him the Pebble, and said he was going to run him back to Billy Corgan's NWA so he could wrestle on YouTube where he belongs. And I just noted Starks needs a good comeback here. And fuck, he got it. As soon as he got the microphone and said, well, Maxi Pad. And the fans started chanting Maxi Pad. And Starks tore up fucking MJF's tan and his clothes and his style, and the people were with it. And he said, cheap suit, cheap shoes, cheap heat, you fifth-rate Roddy Piper wannabe. And he stood up for himself. And you could tell, again, this wasn't something that had been written. After I saw this, I saw a couple of pieces of SmackDown. And it was so phony and so stagey and so contrived and written next to these two guys. So, after that big promo, MJF kicked Starks in the balls, which was perfect. But he turned, take off his belt and his watch and shit, and he put the ring on, and he swung with the ring, and Starks ducked it and hit him with a big spear, and the place came unglued. So that 10 minutes or whatever it was the best piece of wrestling television all week on this program, which is already you're at a disadvantage being on this program. But I mean, you know, Starks, he can talk. He looks good. He seems serious. We've seen him, you know, work fantastic. And then there was the match with Hobbs and we were like, what the fuck? But he had a broken neck earlier, didn't he? A year ago or however long. They dropped him on his head. I hope that he's physically okay. I have a feeling this will be a great fucking match between the two of them if everybody is at 100%.
It shouldn't be just a match. It should be a feud. It should be weeks of these guys doing promos. Ricky Starks has been used so poorly for so long, even though he's had incredible talent. And the fans got behind him on their own despite the bad booking. He needed something to not be thought of as that guy. And what he needed was a fiery promo that felt real, and we got it. And it was him and MJF going back and forth, and we'll see how this plays out. I certainly hope it's more than one match. With AEW, you never know, and that's the one thing you worry about, because you're like, oh, wow, this has the makings of something that long-term, due to their age and, just it could be a long-term thing that produces great TV because of their talent. You hope it's just not just like one match and then, all right, now you're going to work with Jericho or whatever the fuck it'll be. But
the place they're pointing to, obviously, is MJF and Danielson, now that MJF has turned on the man that Bryan Danielson loves, according to the promo he did last week or whenever. And for a marquee pay-per-view world title match, MJF and Danielson right now has more appeal. But at the same time, when's the next time they've got a pay-per-view? They don't have one for a while, right? Hopefully.
I don't think so. They usually have one in February or something?
Except there's a Ring of Honor thing that we'll talk about in a minute.
AEW in your house.
Yeah, they're going to come to everybody's house individually and do it. But one would think that maybe it would help Danielson with the way that he's been presented. Could now MJF do something heinous to Danielson that gets him off TV for 6 weeks and out of and away from the Blackpool Combat Club and on a singular mission of his own to get even for his mentor and friend William Regal when he comes back from injury, that gives Starks a little time and a little breathing room to carry the torch. Well, I'll get even for goddamn Bryan Danielson and friend for all the other people that you've jacked around, you prick, and they could have some room to run with that. And then if Danielson came back away from Moxley and Useless and the rest of that, the whole misguided thing, maybe he could recapture a little bit of his oomph as a single guy with a spotlight on him that he had before until they put him in this group and neutered him.
Hey, watching this segment, and again, watching it from the inception of when MJF came out, seeing last week, to the people who said MJF can't be booed, he can't be a heel, the fans love him too much, they're booing the shit out of him.
Yes, they are. Because he showed his true colors. They wanted to like the wise ass when he was saying wise ass things about people that they didn't like. But then, when he started saying it about their mothers, the wise ass wasn't as entertaining.
Did you see his tweet earlier today?
I did not.
I guess he's going to Vegas for, I think it's UFC. Put out a tweet, made a list before my flight to Vegas. People started sending this to the drive-thru email. People that will never beat me for the Triple B. The Pebble, the American Dipshit Dragon, Warho, Edward, Sensitive Cowboy, Jungle Jabroni, Darbs the School Shooter,
ooh,
Adam, my brain don't work, so I can't cope Cole. Oh. And Mr. Clean, in quotes, Castagnoli.
That's what I like about the man. He loves to make friends.
Hey,
go ahead.
If I can ask you a question to go back to the Battle Royal, Dustin Rhodes got a big pop. Looks good. I mean, always looks good. It's not a surprise that Dustin Rhodes, everything he does in the ring looks great, and it looks better and better every time you see him. It never gets worse. He's announced publicly that he'll be retiring next year. Is there something there? Despite the way he's been used for 20 years or whatever you want to argue. But we saw what happened when they built up the Cody thing. That was effective. The Cody match, I should say.
Yeah.
Dustin Rhodes one last time, want to get his hands on MJF. Give it a real build. Don't rush it. Don't throw it away. Don't make it the main event on Rampage or Battle of the Belts. Is there something there? Can they talk people into really wanting to see Dustin get his chance against MJF for the belt?
Yes, I believe they could. I believe as emotional as Dustin, because he really is going to retire, and he's in his mid-50s, even though he looks so good. So he could get emotional enough about this being his last big chance. Or maybe he even downplays expectations that he would win the title, but he wants to teach the fucking kid a lesson before he goes. a personal issue in that point, because a lot of these fans would be smart enough, they might even say, well, they're not going to put the belt on him. Maybe he doesn't even care about that. Maybe something happens that shames the Rhodes, Dustin himself or the Rhodes family, or hurts his feelings in some respect, that he wants to, one time, before he's done, teach that fucking kid a lesson.
Hey, you know what? I mean, they like to play with this stuff on TV, so it's not completely crazy. They make a lot of references to WWE on TV, so it's not crazy. If it wasn't for you, my brother would be here right now and he'd be the world champion.
Boom. There you go.
You turned on my brother in that match with Jericho with a stipulation where he'd never get a world title shot again. He's not even here anymore. And it's all because of you.
You turned on my brother, you dirty rat. It's all, yeah. But it would have to be instigated by something that MJF did, maybe to some kid that Dustin had taken under his wing. One of his students, and MJF just sodomizes him with a rusty fishing knife or whatever. And Dustin comes out and
metaphorically speaking.
Well, yeah, if necessary. And then MJF berates Dustin as a broken down has-been, a sway-backed horse that ought to be taken out behind the barn and shot. Well, you think this horse doesn't have one more ride left in him? And a blah, blah, blah. And it would be more interesting than this fucking best-of-7 trampoline championship where they're all fucking mute. Not one of them ever goddamn speaks. You can't stand to hear the fucking Buckaroos' voice. You can't understand most of the other team, and fucking Twinkle Toes just does the phone sex thing and sighs a lot. All right, let's get back to this program now that we've given them another main event that they won't take advantage of. Samoa Joe wrestled Darby Allin. And once again, I love Samoa Joe. I don't know how they have managed to do this to where, I've complained in the past that they bring guys in and don't, give them any wins on television. So he's figured out a way to make the guy less over and less interesting by giving him wins on television, just to get even with me. Samoa Joe and Darby Allin could have been a good match, I would think. But apparently not for either the way it was booked or not for this audience. They can't sit and watch a wrestling match, apparently, or can't be trusted to ahead of time. Or maybe Darby Allin just refuses to not do this shit. As Samoa Joe's got 2 belts now, the Ring of Honor TV title and the TNT title. So he's champion of a network that they're barely on now and champion of a company that barely exists. But okay, they'll have a good match. 30 seconds in, Darby Allin dives through the ropes head first and just completely misses Joe, and on purpose, it was a miss spot, and cannonballs himself all the way to the railing. That was 30 seconds in the match. Wasn't the finish. Wasn't even hardly the start. Joe pulls the pad up off the concrete while the referee's standing there and doing nothing about it and never tried to put it back. And then Joe gave Darby Allin a turnaround spinning power slam on the concrete floor. That's the break spot. A 300-pound Samoan power slammed this 150-pound emaciated skateboarder on a concrete floor for a break spot. When they come back 3 minutes later, Joe runs him down the apron of the ring and into the ring post, and he spins around in 2 flips and takes a bump off the apron of the floor again. That's not the finish. The doctor checks on him while the referee took about a full minute for a 10 count, but he beat the count. And then Darby Allin was back in the ring. Joe gets a 2 count. After he's power slammed him on the concrete, he's missed a dive and cannonballed the rail. He's been run head first into the fucking ring post and bounced off 15 feet. And then, within 30 seconds, Darby Allin is up, leaping over the top rope, giving Joe a coffin drop off the top rope to the floor, and then running and leaping and making a comeback and getting 2 counts. This is what we talk about when I say, you can give somebody a finish, but the match is up to them, and this was horrible. Because what can anybody else do? And how ineffective can Samoa Joe be? What else can you do to hurt a motherfucker? If this fucking emaciated small child cannot be hurt by any of this, why should anybody sell anything? And if Samoa Joe at twice his body weight and twice his experience level and twice everything does all this shit, and guess what the finish was? After all that, Joe caught him coming off the top in another coffin drop and choked him out. So, power slam on the concrete didn't beat him. Head first into the ring post like a fucking lawn dart didn't beat him. Diving head first to concrete floor didn't beat him. We choked him out. But it's okay, because then after the finish, Joe's parading around and Darby Allin got back up and dared him to fight him again. So he did. Because there's an afterbirth in every match. And Joe beats him up again and then gives him a muscle buster on the skateboard with the wheel side sticking up. And then put the choke on him and choked him out again. Now Darby Allin's a fucking complete just piece of shit. He got beat, got up, got smart, got beat again. Meanwhile, he's the strongest man in the fucking company, but he's still a piece of shit. Everybody suffered here. And then Wardlow came out and hit the ring, and Joe bailed out with no contact. And so that was anticlimactic. So we can kind of stop wrestling now, because a 300-pound Samoan giant can't hurt a fucking skateboarder half his size with anything he does. What'd you think of this contest?
It was nice to see Darby in a high-profile match on TV. Joe looks like he's getting into better shape. That's nice to see. Hopefully that means he'll have an extended run. I feel guilty saying this. This is one of the problems being your friend. I enjoyed it. However, you brought up nothing but good points. You make me feel bad for enjoying it. Because the truth is, I did have the thought several times, that didn't finish him off. He had to kick out of that. There was no way to do this match so he didn't kick out now. To me, that's the thing. Once you start the kickouts, you start killing things, moves, the opponent, whatever it may be. You start killing things once you start kicking out of stuff. I enjoyed the physicality of it.
Everything looked good. Yeah. It all looked good. There was no phony bullshit work like with a Brian Cage or fucking some of these other slugs. Everything looked good. As a matter of fact, that's the problem. It looked too good. How the fuck is this even possible? But
I'll tell you this, but you brought up Wardlow. I have no interest in Wardlow right now. I do not want to see this guy. I hate to say that, but they've made it so I don't want to. Every feud he's been involved with has been terrible.
Did I see him? His hair has turned gray?
Oh, I did not notice.
Or his hair looked lighter. It was jet black, right? I don't know. Maybe it was the lights. I don't know. But that's what I was talking about earlier with not every match is supposed to be a great match. Some are supposed to enhance someone's image to lead them to a great and or money drawing match. And I don't know who got enhanced here, because if Darby looked like the strongest guy in the company after the first time he got beat, because it took all that to beat him, then he fucking gets up in Joe's face and gets beat again. Now he's just an idiot. I don't.
He's like a babyface Jason Voorhees. You think he's dead, and then he just pops back up and you kill him again. And then he's gone until next week, and he comes back.
And you kill him again.
And then you kill him again.
Didn't Jason got a couple of people before he started getting killed all the time, didn't he?
He did. Based on how Darby's been booked, and based on how popular Darby has seemingly always been, even though he doesn't have Sting right now, but he was popular before he had Sting, quite frankly. I think he's helped Sting almost as much as Sting's helped him, in a way. Would it have hurt him for Joe to have beaten him in a third of the time with a lot of the same kind of physicality? Because of who Darby is, would it have hurt him at all?
No, that actually would have made an impact, because then people would have said, wow, Darby doesn't usually get beat that quick. Because if the point is to get Joe over, which apparently that was here, then that you would have done that. But as it was, it took Joe everything that he could fucking do to beat this guy, and then a guy twice the size of Darby Allin, Wardlow, comes out. What the fuck? How is that built, that confrontation? Joe could barely whip Darby. Now this fucking giant beast. Instead, it's supposed to be, wow, Joe beat Darby that quick, but here comes Wardlow. But so trying to let Darby take all his goofy death wish bumps that he wants to take to show how tough he is and how crazy he is, put a lot of attention on him, which took attention away from Joe beating him because it took him forever and everything. But Joe still beat him and then beat him again. Let's move on. Did you asked me not to skip the interview with Pockets and Pip Sabian.
And clearly you skipped the Moxley one because there was a Moxley promo earlier too.
Oh yeah, Moxley was in the back. Where is the same place he always is?
It wasn't a bad promo. It was the one time I was going to say he did an all right promo, and it's the one that you skipped right past. But yeah, I told you should watch this Orange Cassidy segment just because we're friends.
But it wasn't even comedy. It was funny, but not on purpose. It was like local cable access.
Exactly.
It was boring. Nobody gave a shit. The people speaking didn't give a shit. It was apparently setting up something for Friday that nobody's going to watch. And it was involving people that look ridiculous.
And it was following, this was the big thing too. It was following what was, at that point, one of the better shows in a long time. I'm not a big fan of Battle Royals. It was over relatively quickly. MJF and Starks was a Dynamite segment, no pun intended, and they gave it time. And then Samoa Joe and Darby, again,
cars were crashing.
Cars were crashing. A lot of people liked it. So it wasn't just me. A lot of people at that point were saying this has so far been a pretty good show. And then you get Orange Cassidy and Kip Sabian in a backstage confrontation that was terrible.
Is there some... Let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, Pip Sabian has been getting paid by this company apparently for 3 years. To do what? For who? Why? So then they had a match where it was not only going to be, it was Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Useless against Jake Hager with his purple hat and Danny Garcia. And I wrote right at the bell, 15 minutes of this just to see Claudio work. Doesn't work for me, brother. So I skipped ahead to get to the meat of the matter. Although I did notice in the course of the skipping that Jake Hager has the coordination of a sack of wet hammers. Did you see the first ever fucking spear out of a goddamn Hurricane Rana? Did you see that?
I watched the match.
Claudio goes to give him Hager the Hurricane Rana off the top turnbuckle. And right as Claudio jumps up and flips backwards, Hager tries to push off and his feet fly off the ropes and go out from under him. And he just goes fucking head and face first in a spear motion straight to the fucking ground over the top of Claudio. I've never seen anything like that in my life. But otherwise than that, did I miss anything in this contest?
No. This is like one of those things that even if you like it, you feel like you've just seen these people doing this stuff way too much. For too long. It's been months now. This Yuta, Garcia, Jericho, and Blackpool, and...
Well, but at least they did an interview afterwards, because here's where I listened to Moxley. See, I knew he was going to be back. Well, I didn't want to hear him in the fucking garage with the green light again or whatever. But Tony Schiavone gets in the ring with Moxley and Claudio and Useless, and there's a sign in the back. Second row guy. I came for the sports presentation. I have a feeling he was highly disappointed. So this is where Schiavone shows the VTR of an interview that he did with William Regal, quote unquote, a few weeks back. And they're standing backstage, and I don't know when they shot this, probably last week, I don't fucking know. But the first quote from Regal is, "People are only going to see this if something bad happens to me." Like he left a note just in case. If this all goes horribly wrong, I want people to understand why I did this. And then he tried to explain why he helped MJF and tried to put the backstory that they had concocted to explain how they started this, not knowing where it was going to end up, and now it's ended up with Regal's going to be starting back with the WWE after the 1st of January, as we've been talking about for weeks and weeks. Didn't surprise us. Don't know why it surprised them. Even Regal was not up to making this make sense. He was like, I realized the Blackpool Combat Club didn't need me, but I needed to show them why they didn't need me. And at one point in there, he destroyed every bit of credibility he had. He uttered the phrase, Wheeler Yuta can be the best wrestler in the world. And immediately heads all over the globe exploded. And he wanted to teach them how to lead by example and to always stay one step ahead of other people, which is why he stabbed all of them in the back to turn around and aid MJF, who I don't fucking... This who was a square peg in a round hole. He suspected MJF of going to do this. That's why he taped this interview before MJF did what he suspected he was going to do. But he put himself in the place to be hospitalized by MJF to prove a point to the Blackpool Combat Club that they need to stay one step ahead. Oh, mother. And when that VTR was over with, there was everybody in the ring just standing there and gawking with attempted mopery. And then Moxley just launched into a promo about the Ring of Honor pay-per-view and his war with the Jericho Appreciators. And
he couldn't remember the date of his main event against MJF, but he could remember the Ring of Honor pay-per-view.
And finally, he ended up with claiming that they were about to make a serious statement, as opposed to the incoherent statement that we'd been hearing for the last 10 minutes. When this was over, you and I, we do this show for remuneration and for the glory of it. But we read about this shit. We keep up with it. Did you still understand, even knowing that they had to rewrite all this shit and what the real story was, but did you understand any of this?
It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And Moxley's face kind of told that story. You want to talk about a statement. You know what the first statement I would have made was if I was the Blackpool Combat Club? What do you mean you've been sitting on this for 2 weeks, Shivani? What is that? Since when do the commentators film secret interviews that they'll only release upon death? When did that start? This is now, what, 3 or 4 exits they've given William Regal off TV. It gets, the explanation makes less and less sense each and every time they do it. I don't understand any of this.
Do you think Tony's back there going, go out and say it again this week and see if he can get it right?
I think I think Tony Khan is desperately trying to appease some of the people that were in the ring. And I think he's trying to appease the people that like William Regal, and he's trying to even still appease William Regal and give them this ridiculous exit, which makes no sense. And if you're going to let him out of this and screw up everything you've been booking in your main event programs, and just get him off the TV already.
Well, moving on with the show, we had another promo from the House of Black, in the dark, in the black, very spooky. All I can say is we need a lot more Julia Hart and a lot less of everybody else in that group. Moving on.
The most stagey promos, the way they talk, it's like they're doing their own little horror films. They're little horror speeches, not films.
Horror speech.
Now it's your turn to talk. Come in. I will do something evil. Now it's your turn to talk. Yes, we are ready for evil. Like, what is this? Just be wrestlers.
Oh, we're ready for evil. Oh, yeah, we're ready for evil.
My friend over here is hiding in the shadows. I've been standing here the whole time waiting to walk over. What about my big friend? I, too, am standing in the back. Every promo they do is the stupidest promo I've ever seen until the next one.
I can't disagree with any of that. But I like Julia Hart, a.k.a. Stevie Nicks.
What do you think of Christy McVie passing away this past week?
Well,
any thoughts?
She was 70-something. I mean, it wasn't unexpected. She was getting up there.
You a big Fleetwood Mac fan?
Big Fleetwood Mac fan. Christine was okay. Stevie was the attraction of the group.
What about Peter Green?
The ex-wrestler, you mean, who strong-armed people? I'd like to see some actual posters of Peter Green being a pro wrestler in England in the 60s. To believe that. It's in all the rock and roll books. I've never heard him talked about in the wrestling business.
Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin's manager. Every biography says he was
I thought that was Peter Green or Peter Grant.
You're talking about Peter Grant, I believe. And
yeah.
I'm referencing him now. I was talking about the Fleetwood Mac guitarist.
Oh, who the fuck is Peter Green?
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Speaking of who the fuck are these people, we had a 6-girl tag with Jane Cargill, Red Velvet, and somebody against Kiera Hogan, somebody, and somebody. They don't say their names often enough, and when I'm on speed search, I'm not going to back up. And about the end of that match is when the audio just died, just stopped. And I'm sitting there watching the rest of the show with not a peep of audio. And only thing we missed were Tony Schiavone with Britt Baker and Saraya, and with no audio. Their previous interviews, any indication, no audio helped that. And then the tag team title match with FTR against the Acclaimed. But in all fucking honesty, we weren't going to critique this match as a match anyway. We were going to critique the finish and the fact that the match happened and what came out of the match, because all those things sucked. The finish, Cash powerbombed Caster and top spreaded him, and Caster rolled through him 1, 2, 3. The partners weren't even involved in the finish. The partners weren't even in the ring. Now they're having tag team matches where it just comes down to 2 guys just changing moves until one of them wins. So the finish was rotten. The fact that they had the match was rotten. We've talked about this. Okay, now it's too late to do anything about the fact that they lost a lot of opportunity with FTR. They buried them specifically because of jealousy on the part of the Buckaroos. They didn't like hearing that FTR was the best tag team. It was a shoot on the whole FTR, fuck the revival thing. It was a shoot on the part of the smarmy little Cucamonga kids from 5 or 6 years ago. Because they couldn't stand that people were saying that FTR was the best team because they, in their deluded, self-indulgent, masturbatory fantasies, think they are. So, they get FTR in the company. The booking is insane. The push is insane. They have few wins. They somehow slip into winning the tag team titles once. They get them taken away. They start getting over organically again with the people who realize just great performance after great performance and start going, why the fuck are these guys not on TV all the time or any of the time? Why do they always get beat? Why is the one guy always in a singles match? And somehow they got over enough that they gave them all the belts for every other promotion in the world, except the one that they're on the TV of that actually counts in this environment. And the Buckaroos had the opportunity to do that, which would have been right for business. But, of course, they didn't because they wanted to go back and play on the trampoline with their friends and Twinkle Toes. So they slide out of dropping the belts to FTR. They'll come back and do it later on. They'll revisit it in the future. Yeah, you lost your fucking chance. And a lot of times I've been getting a blowjob. I might have thought, well, I'll revisit this in the future. It was never as good the second time around. Nevertheless, so FTR's got every other belt in the entire world of every other company, Ring of Honor, New Japan, AAA, but not the AEW belts. Those then slide from a makeshift tag team that they were put on instead of FTR to the Acclaimed, who are the newest team that the fans have gotten over by themselves because they love the thing with Billy Gunn. They love the scissoring. They love the rapping. They love these guys. And now it's no longer right to put the belts on FTR. But meanwhile, it is also not right to have this fucking match. Because not only do the Acclaimed is a popular team, but not an experienced team. Hopefully that will come, but they're not the best wrestling tag team in this company, even though they wear the belts. So, yes, the idea would be wanting to put them against a team that has more experience, it's more professional, it's more accomplished to get a better match out of them, but not another babyface team, because then you are splitting your audience. And since the Acclaimed is the hot team of the moment, it's further damage to FTR's reputation. Not only do they have to go out there not even as heels where they can fuck up their cheating and lose, but have an out, a gripe, a bitch, they have to go out there as full-fledged baby faces, split the audience, most people going for the Acclaimed. I couldn't hear. I don't know about the audio, but I bet they did. And then put them over. And in the process, it kind of shows that the real best tag team is these guys over here, because they're so much farther along than the Acclaimed, and it's not the Acclaimed's fault. If they could, in this whole pissy-ass one-horse company, if they could actually put together an experienced quality heel tag team that could have matches with guys that were greener and put them over properly, that would be just swell. But instead, they continue to beat FTR. The FTR can't beat anybody except in every other promotion they wrestle in where they're the champions, but nobody in AEW is scared of them because they lose every match except for the singles matches they have, which they lose all of those too, except for Dax 1-1. He beat his partner. So then they get beat here, and then they all have to fucking hug. Because FTR's like, oh, thank you for shitting in our face, you green team that we carried through this. Now we put you over and we'll hug you. And then the ass boys appear on the screen. In the last 60 seconds of this television program, a completely unrelated tag team pops up on the screen with a Christmas card from a team that we have never seen on this television program, the Briscoe brothers, but who have had the best tag team matches in the world over the past year with the team that just got beat by the Acclaimed. And it's a challenge for a dog collar match at the Ring of Honor Final Battle pay-per-view that is actually going on as we are recording this. Yes, they not only made the challenge for the match 60 hours before it would actually go in the ring, but when they did that and FTR had to stand there with a dumbfounded look on their face about this news that had just been imparted to them, they threw up a graphic, and that's the last thing you saw on the TV show was dog collar match, Saturday, FTR Briscoes, which means that not only had the match already been signed, but the information had been disseminated in a wide enough circle that the graphics department knew about it, but the people involved in the match didn't. And then they go off the air, and we had just finished a podcast that very day where we said that this Ring of Honor pay-per-view card is a joke and who's going to buy this, and at least before they had FTR and Briscoes, so there was a match that people would be willing to pay $30 or $40 to see, and they don't even have that. And so what did they do on the Wednesday night before the Saturday afternoon? Like I said, 60 hours before it would go in the ring. There you go. Here's your match to sell the pay-per-view. Announced by an unrelated team that's not in it, on behalf of a team that's not allowed on our television program because of alleged reasons, which I'm starting to call shenanigans on more and more every day. Because, you know, the Briscoes spent a lot of time in Ring of Honor with the Buckaroos, and I've been around both those sets of people, and I guarantee you that they probably wouldn't hang out together a lot outside the ring. Maybe there's some heat, who knows? But an unrelated team issued a challenge on behalf of a team that's never been on television to the team that just got beat to be in the main event of the pay-per-view in 60 hours. Brilliant marketing, don't you think, Brian?
You know, someone just emailed us before, and they said, you know, I work, and I don't get to watch wrestling when I'd like to. I DVR it, and I watch it over the weekend. That fan who watches Dynamite over the weekend, they're going to hear about that main event coming right as it's probably happening. If they get to watch it on Saturday, it's ridiculous. The surprise isn't worth it because even if it had worked out well, AEW is dying in the ratings as the show goes on every week. Once you get to the women's segments that are bunched together, you're going to get a ton of people dying off that show. So this was announced at the very end of the very last segment of this show that you'd have to sit through the whole show to get through. And again, like you said, by a team that's not even involved, and the whole buildup was stupid.
And the people going to the main event are sitting in the ring, the losers, having just hugged the team that beat them.
You guys lost. Guess what? We're going to have a match for fans that really like matches.
Yeah, you guys just lost, so we're going to put you in the main event of a pay-per-view.
In a dog collar match. What's necessary?
In a dog collar match that nobody's going to see to begin with because nobody even knew about this fucking match until now. And somebody's going to say, well, they can plug it on the Friday night show, the one that just set the record low rating.
Tony could have said it during his media call. I know they wanted the surprise at the end of the show, but it wasn't worth it. Especially if you don't even have the Briscoes to be able to be there.
Well, besides that, obviously, it's not like that this match took heaven and earth to move to get the contract signed for. So they could have announced it 4 weeks ago and then filled the rest of the card in like they did last time with matches that nobody gives a shit about. Because they would have had at least something. People would have said, okay, dog collar, Briscoes, FTR, all their other matches are great. I'll pay to see that match since I won't be able to see it in AEW because of reasons. But now they're expecting with 2 days' notice, people haven't planned in the holiday season. People ain't got nothing to do on Saturday afternoon if they even get the fucking word. They're thinking, well, I'll see. They'll do what we're going to do. We're going to watch it for free from some unknown source.
Well, don't say that.
No, I will, because I want Tony to know. Brian Last and I would have both bought this fucking fiasco to see that match if you'd have bothered to announce it a week or two ahead of time. But now we're going to fucking watch it for free from an unknown source that you wouldn't approve of. And all we're going to watch is that match because the rest of the show is still going to be the shits. But we might have watched the rest of it if we had a financial investment in it, but we're not going to, so we're not going to bother.
For the record, I'm not guaranteeing I'm watching anything, certainly not by illegal means, but secondly, funny enough, as we are recording, and as this event is taking place as we are recording, they just announced more matches. I woke up to more matches announced.
Well, God damn it.
The day of the show, I woke up to see, another tag team match on the show.
Wait a minute, hey, Brian. Here's the thing. How many times have you gone into a whorehouse and you have paid
I could say never.
Oh, come on.
Where the fuck am I going to find a whorehouse?
I know the family may be listening now, but, just tell them to cover their ears. So you walk into a whorehouse.
Okay.
And you pay the standard rate for one girl. But when you get in the room, there's 6 girls there and they don't ask you for any more money. When has that ever happened?
How many whorehouses have you been in?
Well, nevertheless, and we don't need to do things. I have notes, but I can't give you an exact count unless I confer with. Nevertheless,
Jesus.
The point is, once people have bought something, there is no need for you to give them a bunch more shit. And if they ain't already decided on Saturday morning that they're going to watch a show that starts at fucking 2:00 in the afternoon local time or whatever, you pretty much lost your fucking chance. Anyway, try to act like you don't go to. All right.
Never once. I don't even know where I would find one.
Well, I'll give you
I know
list.
people I could point someone to say, hey, if you need that, this guy could hook you up. But I have no idea where that shit is.
How far are you willing to drive?
I don't drive anywhere.
Well, I'm going to try to give you a list. I guess there's bus transportation in that neighborhood. Nevertheless. So the point is, is it desperation? Is it foolishness? Oh my God, nobody's buying this thing. I'll add a match that they'll all like, but he thinks, like the rest of them do, that everybody is going to know instantly everything that's happening. And they're going to just, oh my God, this was just announced. I have to drop my entire life. Fuck the kids on Saturday afternoon. Well, don't fuck them literally. We don't advocate the fucking of children, but fuck their time, fuck their attention. I'm going to watch wrestling. Or whatever.
And if you're watching NXT tonight, are you saying, hey, I'm going to double fist it. I'm going to go one right into the other.
Oh, well, that's right. There's NXT business today also that we don't care about. Well, there you go. So